Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I got you an interesting build on how to use Atlas instead of a punchy build. We're going for a little bit more of a rock throwing build today, and this is with his rumbled augment, a rather forgotten and usually outclassed as well as awkward to use augment. Now this is building upon my previous Rumbled showcase that I showed almost a year ago, with a little bit of new tech now, new tools, and new fancy things to show. In fact, this current update has pushed this build to be so strong now that you can very easily get all the way up to about 120 to 130 kpm, which is significantly higher than it used to be. One thing I do want to point out is while I'm using Nautilus for grouping, I would still recommend using Magus Anomaly as a fallback at the start of missions so that you can actually build a combo, because this is how you manage to stack Weeping Wounds consistently, since it gets passed on when you go into Rumblers. This allows you to proc status on enemies consistently, which can actually activate melee influence, as you can see, which results in enemies dying really quickly. Is it faster to kill enemies this way than just swinging my dagger? Not really, but is this a way to make a meme build extremely high functioning and better than you would normally expect? Absolutely. Now there's one other thing else to consider here, is this is the Quiver version of the build that I'm showcasing, which means I would even get stealth multipliers, which are not visible or present in the simulacrum. Significantly higher damage on my initial hits and procs the first time, only once every 3 seconds. However, you can also repurpose this build with Roar too as well, since it would use the exact same stat split. Do keep in mind, ever since the Overguard changes, your Rumbled Augment will now also deactivate if you run out of Overguard. And you only get about, I think, like 7,000 Overguard, 8,000 Overguard on this setup. Therefore, the Invis strat with Quiver is better than Roar, unless you are really good at parkouring and just not getting hit. Granted, because our 4 does also deal radiation procs as well as, I think, Viral and Electric, then that means you do have a decent amount of CC and group up from Nautilus so you don't get hit as much. For the Quiver tech, what I normally do is bullet jump, aim like this, aim glide, and then aim at my companion to hit them. You need enough strength for this to work. I mean, no, not strength, range. Otherwise, if you are moving too fast, it will pull you out, because you'll notice if I bullet jump and stuff and whatnot, then I do go slightly out of the radius, but when you're in your 4, you can't bullet jump anyway, so that's not an issue. For a full breakdown on how to do the Quiver tech and the original showcase, explaining all the nitty-gritties of this setup, do check out the video at the top right. The main thing that I want to go into today about this build is we're basically using an Amalgam Argonak Metal Auger build with a Dagger to strip all armor. The interesting thing about this is that Amalgam Argonak's armor strip procs not just off direct hits, but even status effects, which is the reason why melee influence works so well with Amalgam Argonak, because not only do electric procs strip armor when they tick and cross-chain to other enemies when they tick, but electric procs will also activate melee influence to spread our damage much further. Not only that, melee influence carries the trait over from the original melee and is considered dagger damage, meaning any and every electric proc created and spread through melee influence will also strip armor from proccing Amalgam Argonak Metal Auger. You'll see on this build it is a gas electric radiation build. This is because when we have Nautilus grouping enemies up, then gas persists in an AoE even after enemies die, leading to quadratic scaling damage and armor strip. Our electric is a good source of damage too, because that actually scales with the elementals, unlike gas. I do have condition overload here because Rumbled does actually scale with it. I have no crit mods because Rumbled has 0% base crit chance and a 2.0 times crit multiplier. Therefore, I'm not even gonna bother. However, it does have 12.5% status, and with Weeping Wounds fully stacked, we go up to about 70-ish% status or so. Exodia Force is also important because this can also proc Amalgam Argonak Metal Auger, however the AoE is only 6 meters, so unless you're close to a group of enemies this isn't going to tag them as much, but do keep in mind if you walk up to a bunched crowd, melee influence will spread a shit ton of electric procs, but your Exodia force will also absolutely destroy by spamming 10 to 20 AoEs, dealing full weapon scaling damage and 10 to 20 armor strips at once. For my pistol, I don't care what you use here today, do keep in mind that you should be bringing Dexterity Arcanes so that your Dagger can have 20 melee combo as well as an Airmon so you don't lose it too quickly. Every once in a while, a couple of minutes, you're going to have to come and actually swing at enemies to stack it back up to 220, which is another reason why I recommend using Magus Anomaly so that you can pull enemies in if you really need to at a specific moment. Otherwise, I would recommend just bringing some kind of AoE pistol like a Spore Lacer or Crit Latum to kill off the Acolyte, because while you can kill them with Rumbled, it can get scuffed. Now, our actual Atlas build looks like this. There's a couple of new mods here today. I do have Energize, but that is not absolutely mandatory. Steadfast also works. Energy Nexus is the reason why I no longer need Equilibrium. This build, while it's only 45 efficiency, the only abilities we cast is Quiver, or Roar if you're going that route, which works because we have high duration and strength, and Rumbled. So, this means that as I don't cast very often, once every, 30 seconds, since Multi-Efficiency will give me extra duration when I have shields, which should not be hard to do because I will be invisible most of the time. Then every 30 seconds I get 9 energy back, which should be very easy to completely negate the cast costs of Quiver to the point that I could honestly mess up and miss my Quiver shot 3 times and it would still work. Precision Intensify does stack onto our Rumblers for ever more damage and is significantly cheaper and stronger to use than Umbral Intensify. Those are the main shticks, and because I no longer have a penalty to anything, then I can free up this slot. I no longer need, say, like Streamline or Fleeting or some other stuff, and I run extra range so that I could slot Narrow-Minded and get us back up to neutral range, and the bubble covers all of us. That's how I get the duration this high to last roughly half a minute, including Multi-Efficiency. For other recommendations, besides the helmet saying Roar as the alternative option, I would recommend trying to bring more duration shards if you want ever more comfort, because then you can crank the duration of the Quiver Cloak Arrow all the way up to roughly 40 seconds or so. But yeah, let's just get a good demonstration on how this build works, since it is much simpler to use than before and more generous, though you do have to decide between are you willing to use the quivering your Sentinel strat or just settling on Roar, but you got to be pretty spammy and pretty smart on how you engage with enemies, as with the Overguard changes in the past half a year to a year, the final result is that we now lose our Rumbled and deactivated when your Overguard hits 0, which was not the case before. You can see here that I'm using Magus Anomaly to build my combo super fast earlier on. I'm still getting good amount of kills for life support regardless, because melee influence is still activating, even though we're not intending to design this entirely around our Dagger. So yes, technically your Dagger would result in better KPM than Rumbled, but the whole star of the show today is trying to make this long-forgotten and kind of gimmicky augment actually work well. So you'll see we're almost at 12 times combo. It's been about 40 seconds. Here we go. So I find an area where I'm not going to get screwed up FOV. I do this, oops, and you miss, and then you try again, and it's like, oh no, you keep missing, right? It might take a little bit of practice. So there we go, and we have it, and now all I literally do is just go around and I throw these. Once I activate melee influence, then everything will start dying. Remember, that's why we had to stack up 12 times combo for Weeping Wounds. Come on. It's being a little bit finicky this time, I don't know why. There we go. Now if I start hitting stuff, enemies just disappear. All of these gas procs, electric procs, all of it is being spread, and when you come out of invis, you just set it back up again like that. So yes, this is why I would say that only those that are really confident with it, I would recommend trying the Quiver strat. Otherwise, Roar might suit you better, and the more you spam, the more radiation procs you get, the more CC you get, and thus the less likely enemies are going to hit you and waste your Overguard. I would not recommend doing this for longer runs in Endurance. Even, say, 2-hour Steel Path is a little bit questionable, but this is a way to bring back the Rumbled Augment and have it actually be useful. We're at about 2 minutes in, and I'm already well above 200 kills, despite all of the setup that we had to do at the start, right? So that's how I'm proving and demonstrating that, yes, this build does actually work, and if you get enemies to group up right on top of each other like this, getting melee influence to proc together, and then also getting gas procs all in one place, it's just easy instant armor strip, and you just get into this loop of cordon resetting its cooldown. Also, because you're invisible, means that your Nautilus is less likely to get targeted, which means it is much, much easier to survive. The reason why this matters is you cannot use or shoot your weapons when you are invisible, meaning I would not be able to use the reinforced bond tech to restore shields to my Sentinel. And here we go. So I'm just going to keep going until we spawn the Acolyte in and take them out, as that is the point when I can show why Rumbled, while can kill an Acolyte, is not exactly the best way to do so. Also, do keep in mind that if it's violence, you will get pulled out of Invis, and that is where, say, Operator with Magus Lockdown could be helpful so that you can lock down violence before she's able to really get her hands on you and nullify your entire kits. But yeah, that's why bringing a solid pistol would be really helpful. And you can also see that I just don't really need to use Equilibrium or Flow. Energize is not even really necessary due to the Energy Nexus mod coming from the Whispers of the Wall update, completely negating the penalty that I have. But yeah, for the rest of this video, we're just going to be looking at our Rumble setup. You'll also notice how the top right of my screen, my Weeping Wounds, has dropped down to 8 stacks. So what I'm going to do is, on this next rotation, when I find enemies that are a bit closer together like this, then I can try and build my combo back up. And you can also see how Guardian kicked in there to give me a restore on my shield gate. And I can also do that to give myself a tiny little bit of invis and pull enemies to here. And you'll notice now I'm back to 12 times combo. So I can just shoot my Sentinel again, and then now we're back to business. So once more, this is not meant to be a meta build or whatnot, but just if you want a new fun way to try out and experience Atlas and make good use of a rarely used augment, now is our chance. If you want a full explanation on how melee influence works, I guess I can do that while I'm busy waiting for the Acolyte to spawn. You have a 20% chance whenever you inflict an electric proc with your melee weapon, which this is considered one, to activate a buff. When you activate that buff, for the next 18 seconds, every single non-IPS status effect that you inflict on enemies with your melee weapon will be spread in a 20-meter radius. Because we have a little bit of AoE, or it can just be near people. If I tag, say, 5 enemies with electric procs, then that will spread 5 more electric procs to all enemies within a 20-meter radius. That is the reason why melee influence scales so well, and people might wonder, why does it work so good on Steel Bath? Because, well, let's just say you have 10 enemies beneath your feet that you all bonk. The consequence of that is you now have... Oh, and it was violence. There we go. Violence nullifying and pulling me out. You can strip all armor off like this, but I would normally recommend not doing this. Violence is dying to the raw damage of the throws, though if she does run into the gas clouds, she will die also. It is now time for me to extract, hopefully make of this information what you will, but we do got a much comfier and evolved version of our previous setup of Rumbled Atlas. Once again, as I always say, a like and subscribe goes a long way to helping out the channel. If you learned something today, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. Or better yet, leaving a comment is the biggest part that could help this video reach a larger audience. So thank you once again to everybody. As I always say, 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'll try best to show you the funniest memes and builds as we can with the newest updates, like I've done with the Whispers in the Walls. Now, this is where we gotta say our goodbyes, so thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.